guys, welcome back to Symbolic Logic Part 12. Today, we are taking reference of Symbolic Logic 5th edition, which was written by Irving and Copy from the University of Hawaii. In Part 11, we have seen about valid and invalid syllogism with the help of Venn diagram, figures, and moods. Today, we are going to see about some syllogistic rules and syllogistic fallacies. What is mean by fallacies? Fallacies, what can you say? Fallacies means mistake. So let's see rule number one. So what's the rule number one? Fallacy of four terms is the rule number one. What does this rule one says? The formal fallacy that is committed when a syllogism is constructed with more than three terms or three terms taken in different sense. What does mean by fallacy of four terms? So this fallacy occurs when a syllogism has more than three terms. How we will be finding if it is a syllogism or not? We have four rules, right? So, rule number one is it must contain three terms, which is repeated twice. The second one is it must be in a standard form, and the third one is it must all the premise must follow the proposition, categorical proposition, and the fourth one is it must contain two premises and one conclusion, and and the conclusion is derived from the first two premises. These all concludes it is a syllogism. So this fallacy of four terms occur when the syllogism has more than three terms. A syllogism mustn't have more than three terms. So let's see an example to understand this better. This fallacy of four terms also occur when the syllogism makes no sense. For example, one, knowledge is power, power leads to corruption, therefore knowledge leads to corruption. Does this make sense? No, right? So this syllogism has committed the fallacy of four terms. So next, let's see the next example. All books are stationaries, no pencils or furniture, therefore no furniture or books. Here in this syllogism, we have four terms: books, stationaries, pencils, and furniture. So a syllogism must only contain three terms, which is repeated twice. So this syllogism has committed a fallacy of four terms. Right. So let's see what is the rule two. The rule 2 is the fallacy of the undistributed middle. Guys, what is mean by undistributed? We have seen about distributed and undistributed in the distribution of terms in categorical propositions, right? So, let's recall it again. So, what is mean by distributed? Distributed. Yeah. So distributed in the sense it must include all the things or species in that class. Undistributed means it does not indicate all of them in that class. So fallacy of the undistributed middle. What does it make sense? The formal fallacy that is committed when the middle term of a syllogism is not distributed, at least in one premise. So, at least in one premise, the middle term should indicate all of its class. So, let's understand this clear by looking into the example. All Marxists are revolutionists, all anarchists are revolutionists, therefore, all anarchists are Marxists. Because both of them are revolutionists, thus that doesn't mean organist or Marxist, right? So revolutionist is the middle term. So what is mean by middle term? Let's recall it again. The term which doesn't appear in a conclusion and appears in the first two premises is the middle term. So revolutionist is not appearing in the conclusion, but it appears in the first two premises. So it is a middle term. Revolutionist is the middle term which is undistributed here. So what it is telling? The middle term should be distributed at least in one premise. It is not distributed at least in one premise. Here, all Marxists are revolutionists, all anarchists are revolutionists. In this case, it is the class of revolutionists. It is undistributed because neither of its users applies to all revolutionists. Right. All matters, all analysis. It doesn't say all revolutionists, right? So therefore it cannot be used to connect anarchists and Marxists. Both of them could be separate and unconnected divisions of the classes of revolutionists. So the revolutionist is truly undistributed. Specifically, the structure of this example results in affirming the consequent. So if you take the second example, all students of Stephens are intelligent. All students of Bitspilani are intelligent. Therefore, all students of Bitspilani are students of Stephens. Does this make sense? No, right? This syllogism has committed the fallacy of undistributed middle. Here, the middle term is intelligent. The intelligent is not even distributed in at least one premise. It is not showing like all intelligent, right? All is not there, right? So it is undistributed. Intelligent is undistributed, and it doesn't make any sense. So it has committed the fallacy of undistributed middle. So if you see a syllogism like this with the middle term undistributed, then it has committed the fallacy of undistributed middle. So you can practice this Venn diagrams which we saw in the previous session by making Venn diagrams for each of these examples. I have done it for these two examples. So I have made a Venn. Even though this two example is not a syllogism, the Venn diagram can be valid. So that's why I said you should not depend upon the Venn diagram. We must first check the moods and figures for its validity. Then only we must go to see the Venn diagram, perform a Venn diagram. So even it is not a syllogism, the syllogism has committed a fallacy. The Venn diagram shows it is valid. So let's see rule number 3. Fallacy of illicit major or illicit minor. So what was this fallacy about? Any term distributed in the conclusion must be distributed in the premises. But why? To refer all members of a class to say more about that class than is said when only some of its members are referred to. So what this fallacy is saying is any term distributed in the conclusion, that means the term which is distributed means it indicates all the class of that category in the premise should also be distributed in the both in conclusion and premise. Let's check. So we have illicit fallacy of illicit major and illicit minor. So let's see the example for illicit major. All dogs are mammals, no cats are dogs, therefore no cats are mammals. So in conclusion, if you see the conclusion, cat is a subject, mammals is the predicate. So cat is the minor term and mammals is the major term. So the premise which contains the major term is the major premise and minor term is the minor premise. So since the major term is mammals, the first premise is the major premise. All dogs are mammals. And no cats or dogs is the minor premise. No cats or dogs. If you see this example, mammals is distributed in the conclusion, so it must be distributed in the premise too. But in major premise, which is premise 1, mammals is not distributed. So this syllogism has committed the fallacy of illicit major. So if we see the example of illicit minor, all religious people are fundamentalist. All religious people are opponents of abortion. Therefore, all opponents of abortion are fundamentalist. Illicit of minor. So if you check the conclusion, opposition of abortion is the subject, fundamentalist is the predicate. So the predicate must be the major term. So fundamentalist is the major term and the opponents of abortion is the minor term. If you see the conclusion, it has all opponents of abortion. So opponents of abortion is distributed in the conclusion. Whereas in minor premise it is not distributed. Right. All religious people is only distributed. Opponents of abortion is not distributed. So this syllogism has committed a fallacy of illicit minor. So in example one, fallacy of illicit major has occurred because the mammals is distributed in the conclusion but does not distributed in any of the premises. Right? No, all mammals is not present. Right? So it has committed the fallacy of illicit major. This syllogism has committed the fallacy of illicit minor because in the conclusion minor term is distributed, but the minor term is not distributed in the premise but is distributed only in the conclusion. Right? All opponents of abortion is not there in first two premises, only in conclusion it is distributed. So what the rule says is, if any term is distributed in the conclusion, it must be distributed in any of at least in any of one premise. Since it is not distributed even in one of the premises, this syllogism has committed the fallacy of illicit minor. So let's take the fourth rule, which is fallacy of exclusive premises. What does this fallacy mean? Avoid two negative premises. But why? Any negative proposition, E or O, denies class inclusion. It asserts that some or all of one class is excluded from the whole of the other class. Two premises asserting such exclusion cannot yield the linkage that the conclusion asserts, and therefore cannot yield a valid argument. Fallacy of that's why we need to avoid two negative premises. What are the two negative premises? E and O are the two negative premises. Why it is two negative premises? Because if you take the proposition into the account, no SSP, which is universal negative I, and some S is not P, which is particular negative O. So we need to avoid the premises which are both negative. So let's check into an example to understand better. So no parrots are mammals, no fishes are mammals, therefore no fishes are parrots. Why does this syllogism committed a fallacy of exclusive premises? Because two of its premises are negative. No P is M, which is universal negative. The no fishes are mammals, no SSM is also universal negative. Therefore, no fishes are parrots is also universal negative. We must avoid two negative premises since this syllogism contains two negative premises. So it has committed the fallacy of exclusive premises. Remember, we should not have two negative premises. We should avoid two negative premises. So let's check the rule number 5. Fallacy of drawing an affirmative conclusion from a negative premise. What does this fallacy mean? If either premise is negative, then the conclusion must be negative. Okay. I hope you guys understand it. So let's see an example for it. No parrots are mammals, no fishes are mammals, therefore no fishes are parrots. So this has committed the fallacy of drawing an affirmative conclusion from a negative premise. Now let's check rule number 6. Existential fallacy. What does it mean? From two universal premises. What are the universal premises you guys know? Universal affirmative and universal negative. A and E. These are the two universal propositions we have. Of the form A, which is means universal affirmative. AE or universal affirmative or universal negative. EA means universal negative and universal affirmative, or EE universal negative, universal negative. No particular conclusion. IR means particular affirmative and particular negative may be drawn. So from two universal premises, there should be no particular conclusion should be drawn. So let's check into example to understand better. So we have, yeah, all household pets are domestic animals. No unicorns are domestic animals. Therefore, some unicorns are not universal pets. If you see, all household pets are domestic animals belongs to A type, which is universal affirmative. So we have one universal in premise one. No unicorns are domestic animals. No unicorns are domestic animals belongs to E type, which is universal negative. So we have two premises as universal. So what's the conclusion? Therefore, some unicorns are not household pets. So the conclusion belongs to O type proposition, which is particular negative. What is existential fallacy means, from two universal premises, we should not conclude a negative. We should not conclude a negative thing, negative premise. So in this example, the syllogism has two universal premises and the conclusion as negative. So this syllogism has committed a existential fallacy. So here we should not be having A E I, A E O like this. The conclusion should not be I or O if the two premises are universal. This is existential fallacy. So we have seen all the six fallacies in syllogism. If we are able to avoid these six formal fallacies, our argument and its corresponding Venn diagram would be valid. If we do commit any of the formal fallacies, our argument and its corresponding Venn diagram is bound to be invalid. So we should not, uh, our syllogism should not have any of these six fallacies.